Hi, I'm Ellie,
And I'm Arabella.
art director and photographer at Weekend Creative.
For the past few years, we've built our agency with the goal of producing beautiful, unique photography for brands who are looking to advertise their content with a fresh, playful perspective.
We believe in being bold when creating work and that every detail counts. When we develop work for a new brand, we're agreeing to more than just taking a photo of their product. We're agreeing to capture the essence of their brand too.
In this course, we're going to teach you how to successfully capture that through the careful attention and planning of set design.
By including an emphasis on set design within your pre-production workflow, you'll be able to enhance the character of the product that you're shooting, creating a well-thought-out, beautifully designed image.
By the end of this course, you'll learn how to come up with set design concepts,
Learn how to better plan your shoot,
learn how to execute your own designs,
learn how to incorporate Moodle pieces into your shoots to create more visually appealing photographs.
and learn how important pre-production is within your photography workflow.
This course is aimed at creatives who are looking to enhance their photography skills, from detailed set planning, executing your designs, and pairing products with Moodle pieces to give you an upper hand in the creative field of product photography.
First, let's talk about how to come up with set design concepts.
So we always start by looking at the product and the brand as a whole. So for this shoot, we're going to use Magic Spoon cereal.
Yes.
I brought a couple boxes up here to show you guys. So their whole goal is to remind us of the cereal that you ate as a kid, but it's much healthier.
Yes. I mean, it's just kind of a very nostalgic type of feeling and kind of magical. I mean, just the fact that there's, like, I love the colors that they use.
Yeah.
That they have infused in their brand. And so I think it's just, you know, taking inspiration from the brand itself that will help kind of build out the whole scene and the set.
Yeah, so they use the word magic, so we knew that we wanted to use magic as kind of like a running theme throughout all of the images, and actually we decided that would be shown really well through GIFs. So we thought, like, let's create a GIF based off of every box of cereal that they have, every flavor. We're only going to show you guys one in this course, but we just really love the idea of, like, incorporating magic, and then, like we said, childhood too. So we kind of thought that would be fun to incorporate an Alice in Wonderland kind of feel.
Yeah, where anything can happen, you know, something's like very mystical and kind of playful, and so I think that was kind of where it was born.
Yeah, Alice in Wonderland is a nostalgic
Yes.
story for all of us who grew up watching it, and it also just has that magical feel. We feel like it fits very well with this brand. And
especially with the, like, kind of like eat this, drink that we know from, you know, Alice in Wonderland. So
exactly.
I think that's all infused into this. So
exactly. And the boxes themselves are pretty busy. They have a lot going on. So we're going to incorporate some patterns and some colors into the set, so we're going to keep them fairly pared down and just kind of focus in on a couple patterns that we'll keep repeating throughout the different GIFs. We have, like, a pretty strict color palette that we're going to use too that will make every image cohesive, but it's also going to just keep it more simple. And then we'll be incorporating simple props as well, mostly just the Moodle pieces, and then some cereal bowls and some spoons, depending on the shot, to kind of just keep things, like, very streamlined so that the box can really be the star.
Yes, exactly. One of the best ways for coming up with inspiration for set design is to look at other mediums outside of photography. So, for example, architecture. This is a great place to start because not only will it help you avoid copying other photographers, you can find a lot of inspiration in viewing shapes, viewing patterns, viewing textures in architecture that you can infuse into your set design.
Yeah, because when you think about it, a set is kind of like a little mini world that your products live in. And so when you look at things in the real world, bigger things, you can use those as inspiration for creating this little unique mini world. And so, yeah, we look at a lot of architecture when we're coming up with ideas. And
yeah, because sometimes, like, when you do look at other photography as inspiration, sometimes that can, you'll have that in the back of your head, and that might kind of come out in the images that you're working on. And you don't want to, we're really big on creating original work. And so by looking at other mediums, you'll kind of avoid copying.
Yeah, so other mediums that we look at a lot are graphic design, even just like painting and other forms of art. Those are great places to find inspiration because they're outside of photography, but they have really great patterns and colors, shapes that you can include in your sets that will be totally original and unique for your photos.
Yeah, because you can, like take those elements and infuse them, and it's still unique to you. So.
Yeah, and mixing and matching, right? You don't want to pull inspiration from just one source because then it does become a form of copying. But the more varied I think your inspiration is, the more original your work is going to be.
Exactly.
So our last tip for coming up with set design ideas and concepts is to think about the feeling that you want to evoke and the story that you want to tell through your images. Everything that you choose to include is going to communicate something to people when they look at these photos.
Yeah.
So even just the colors that you use, the patterns, the textures, the shapes, whether they're really organic or if they're more geometric and structural, all of those things are going to communicate to the audience. So we knew that we wanted to create kind of a playful, imaginative, colorful Alice in Wonderland type world where anything can happen. So even the colors that we chose are kind of like almost childlike in primary in a sense, and they're very bright and cheery, very happy. And then the patterns that we chose are kind of playful, also reminiscent almost of like childhood games, so like stripes and checkerboard pattern, which kind of throws back to childhood and also that kind of Alice in Wonderland type feel that we wanted to have. And then any shape that we include is going to be more organic versus geometric because that's where you kind of get that like loose, flowy, playful feel.
And we also knew that we decided that each image, as in each flavor of the cereal, would have its own movement and would be a GIF. So, something magical happening, whether that's like, cereal appearing in a bowl or like certain things like that would be very playful and would be very mystical. And so, knowing this and deciding on the movements kind of helps us to figure out, okay, what does a set look like so that it works with the movement? What do the props look like, the shapes, again, colors, textures, all of that thing. So we also knew that we wanted to include the Moodle pieces in every shot, and so we will design the set around, making sure that those pieces are elevating the cereal and the brand.
So now that you know what kind of feeling you want to have in your set, let's talk about some of the materials that you can use to actually build it. You don't have to get super crazy complicated with this. You could even just look around your house and see what you have. But let's go through some of the things that we use often.
And some of them aren't even very expensive at all. Like they're very accessible. So cool.
So first up we have particle board, also called MDF, and we actually usually buy this in larger 2x4 sheets that you'll see later. Just comes from your hardware store, and we use this because if you use wood, like plywood, for your background and you try to paint it, it will end up having a wood grain texture that will show up in your photos. So maybe you want that, but for most of our sets, we want something really smooth. And we'll show you guys later too that you can cut this out in different shapes, and it has like endless possibilities. You can paint it multiple times, just sand it down. You can paint both sides, so it's very versatile. Yeah. And it's affordable too. I think the 2x4 ones are like $7 at the hardware store. Next up, we have actual wood. So like I mentioned, you could paint this. It will have a texture. But if you wanted wood background for some reason, you can buy sheets like this and then stain them. Or you could even buy planks and then glue them together with wood glue if you kind of want to get that like wooden flooring look. And then you can stain it, paint it to have more of an organic texture.
Yep.
Next up is tile. We use tile a lot if we want kind of a bathroom or kitchen look. We actually have a tutorial on our website that shows you how to make tile backgrounds, and we have an IGTV on our Instagram as well. if you want to check that out. It's pretty easy to do, and it's pretty affordable, and it's more affordable if you want colored tile to buy just like regular white tile, and then before you grout it, you can spray paint it with a matte spray paint and then grout it, and that's a really good way to get really fun colors if you want some unique tile.
Yep. Cool. Okay.
This one is a sheet of acrylic, and we got this from a store called Tap Plastics, but if you have a local plastic store, or sometimes you can even find this kind of stuff at the hardware store, it is reflective, so you have to be careful how you use it, but if you find like fun ways to incorporate it, you can make cool reflections, or just play around with it.
And you could do both colored or kind of like just the clear too, if you wanted to play with adding some textures underneath the clear, you know, kind of like how we did in the last course, if you watch that. But super cool, super useful, and very fun texture.
And then this is just a found texture. Like I mentioned, you can find things just around your house. I don't know where we got this.
This was packaging for...
Oh, it was packaging.
It came from, like I think we ordered something, and this was like the really cool texture in it, and we were like, this is like, I don't know, something cool that you can have in the background or something. And we're always like keeping really random things and like collecting things, because sometimes, you know, you never know when you might use it. And so found textures are always really great. I definitely highly recommend even just like going around your neighborhood and like looking at random things, like even in kind of industrial areas.
You'll find a lot of sometimes.
Dumpster dive is right. And find like cool rocks or like different random things. So like that could become textures for a future set.
And it's free, so even better. And then this is a texture that we made. So this is actually a piece of particle board, and then we glued these wooden dowels on top and then just spray painted it. So there's so many different ways you can make textures like this. Even just wandering around the hardware store, you'll probably get inspiration for different kinds of things that you can do. Again, like pretty affordable and easy, and it adds a really fun texture to your shots.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this is a background that we actually purchased. So, you know, you could probably make something like this, but sometimes it's just easier to buy them. So this was from our friend at Photo Surfaces. If you want to look her up on Instagram, she does custom surfaces, as well as she has ones that you can just buy that are pre-made. But it just has like a really nice, like pretty texture. She has concrete as well. We also recently ordered some backgrounds, some vinyl backgrounds from Club Backdrops, and we really like those as well. They're really fun. We got like a cool terrazzo and a cool green marble. So yeah, don't be afraid to purchase. I kind of recommend, if you're going to purchase backgrounds like this, either buy ones that are very kind of standard, you'll like use a lot, universal, or wait till you have a specific shoot and then buy a texture for that shoot, knowing that you're going to use it.
Exactly. And of course,
fabric. So fabric's another thing we love to use. So many different ways to use this. Obviously, you probably don't want to steam this out before using it. But you
can make like some sort of curtain texture by just using clamps. You can place it as like the bottom part of your set. You can have it as an accent.
Drape it.
Lots of ways. So.
Lots of ways to use fabric.
Super cool. Yeah. And then, last but not least.
And then just good old paper. So you could either, this is a roll of stainless paper from Savage. We used to use this a lot. We don't use it as much anymore. But if you're wanting a set that has just like a very smooth background with no horizon line, that's when you would use stainless paper like this. You could also just put this on the base and have something else in the background.
Or cut shapes out of it.
Yeah, and it's pretty affordable too. Like I think a whole roll like this is like $35 or something.
$30 or something.
Yeah, so it's a pretty affordable source as well. But yeah, it's just if you use it as kind of like a sweeping background, it'll look maybe less like a environment and more just like one color, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So just something to think about, but it's a great option as well.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it.
And that's it. So when I'm planning sets, I like to start out by just sketching out my ideas on paper and getting them all out. I feel like it's a little bit more organic, easier to kind of let the ideas flow than if you start on the computer. Things can be a little bit more rigid and you might get like stuck in ideas. So I always just start by sketching everything out.
Draw me like one of your French girls.
Okay. Not like that.
Okay. Okay, girl.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. So you'll want to think about how many images you will be taking, or GIFs in this case. But yeah, if multiple images will be taken in one set, or if you'll be creating multiple sets, basically you'll want to create a mock-up for each one so that you can make sure that everything goes well together and that it's cohesive. You want to eliminate extra work, and if you can think about like having certain shapes, throughout the images and kind of changing them around, or if you're going to be using like, tile or like some sort of texture or background, it'll just like make it easier if you can sketch and make a mock-up for every single image.
Yeah, so definitely a mock-up for every single set. You may want to create a mock-up for every single image too, depending on how much the images are going to change from set to set. Even if they're all in the same set, maybe you need multiple mock-ups for each one. You'll be able to see like, okay, I have this red colored board that I'm going to use in multiple sets. So you only have to paint it once. Or maybe you'll see like, okay, actually I need to paint 2 red boards because in this one it's going to have 2 or whatever. It'll help you visually see and plan for how many things you need to make.
Yeah.
And how you can also reuse elements throughout the sets to eliminate work, but also just to create more cohesive shoots as well.
Yeah.
And then you'll be able to see all the sets that you have and all the shots that you're going to take and just make sure that they all work together. Because yes, you want variation, but you also want to make sure that these images belong together, that when they're in an Instagram feed or on a website or in a campaign, that they work together and they're can work alone, but they're stronger together.
Yeah, and also I think it just helps to keep you organized too for the actual production part of it, where you're painting and stuff, because then you can see like, okay, this is exactly what I need because of the mock-ups that I've created.
And we have a whole download about shoot planning, and it comes with a customizable shoot plan that you can use to communicate with your clients to get everything approved in advance, which is super important.
Yes.
When you're doing this kind of work, you want to make sure that you don't build a whole set and then your clients hate it.
Exactly. And that's what the mock-ups are for, right? Because this is how you visually communicate with the client, and kind of will help eliminate having any issues with clients where they don't like it, or
it helps them to see what's in your mind. And it helps you as well, so it's just great all around. And that download has a whole tutorial on how to build a shoot plan, and like I mentioned, it has a customizable version as well. It will save you a lot of time the day of the shoot as well. We used to kind of just show up with a whole bunch of stuff and hope that it fit together, which is not usually cohesive, and you spend so much time trying to figure out how things work. And so there's always going to be little adjustments you're going to make the day of the shoot, but it's going to just be so much easier because you have a picture here of
very streamlined, exactly
what it's supposed to look like. You show up, you put it together, and most of the time it just makes it so much faster.
Yeah.
So once you get loose ideas down on paper, then it's time to move to the computer to really bring those sketches to life. I use Illustrator. I love Illustrator. We all know. But you can use any program that you like, including Photoshop, like Arabella would use.
Yes.
Or you can get an iPad app like Procreate. And you can also keep your sketches completely on paper if you prefer.
Yeah.
I just think that it's a little bit easier to make things to scale and just to make changes if needed once it's on the computer. Yeah. So for example, if your client is like, hey, love it, but can you change all the colors? Little easier to do that on the computer than to do that on paper. And then in order to use the actual props and products in my mock-ups, I'll take a photo of them. You could also just take a screenshot from the website, but if you take a photo, you can position it exactly how you need it to be. And then I drop that image into Illustrator, and I either trace over it or I do an image trace with the program. You're also going to want to measure the products in order to make sure that you create a design that's to scale. Okay, so let's get ready to make our mock-up. I've gathered the items that I need. So here is a picture of a Moodle piece that I'm going to be using in this particular set. I also have the picture of the product. I have the colors that I'm planning on using throughout this shoot, as well as the patterns that I'm going to be using as well. And you can see over here, I kind of have my inspiration that I've pulled from the main mood board. And then I've written a description of what this GIF will look like. So first, let's get this box all situated. So this is just a picture. It's a screenshot that I took from the Magic Spoon website. You could also just take a picture of the actual product like I did with the Moodle pieces if you have them in hand. So all we're going to do with this is a really clean background that it's on, and so we're just going to do an image trace. So I'm going to select this image, and then it brings up this panel. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to click image trace, and then I'm going to change the preset to be 16 colors. It's going to just take a second. And there we go. And then I'm going to hit expand. And then I just want to get rid of this white border. So using this direct selection tool, I'm going to select the outside border and I'm going to just delete it. And then I'm going to be left with a nice mock-up of the box that I can use. And this is perfect because I wanted the box to be positioned this way. If I wanted it to be more straight on, I could just delete this side and then kind of readjust these corners to make it look more straight on. And that's the benefit of taking your own photos too, is you can position it exactly how you want when you're dropping it in. Okay, so now let's work on this Moodle piece. I probably could easily do an image trace on this as well. You can see that this background isn't as clean. And this is a really simple shape, so I'm actually going to just trace over it, which will be, I think, a little bit easier. So first I'm going to lock this image down so it doesn't get in the way while I'm tracing. So I will select it and then I'll hit Command 2 to lock it. That makes it so it can't get in the way. And then I'm going to use my pen tool, which is right here. And I'm just going to draw this front rectangle first. So just tracing it out. It doesn't have to be extremely precise. And then I know that I want to make this yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, which is hit yellow, and then go back in. And I'm going to actually make this just the outline so I can see where that circle is going to be, because I'm going to need to draw that as well. And then I'm going to lock that as well so it doesn't get in the way when I'm doing the rest of these little rectangles. So I'm going to make my little top of the box here, fill that. I'm going to make it a slightly lighter color. Okay. And again, it's not lining up perfectly, and that's okay. I'm going to lock that one, and then I'm going to use my pen tool again to make this side. And you could easily do this in Photoshop or Procreate or even just on a sketchbook, whatever is most comfortable for you. I'm going to make the side darker. Okay, so now we have to take care of this circle. So I'm going to use this ellipse tool over here and kind of just make like a rough circle in the shape that it is, and then make that into an outline as well. Let's see, let's fix it a little bit here. It's close enough. Okay. Lock that, and then I want to make this metal part, so I'm going to use my pen tool again, go in here and kind of like roughly trace this and make this little half moon shape, and then I'm gonna fill it in. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to unlock everything. And I'm going to turn this back to filled, and then I'm also going to turn this circle to filled, because what I want to do is cut out this circle from this shape, and they need to be the same color. So I'm going to change that to be that color. And then what I'm going to do is select both of them. And then over here in our Pathfinder, we have this click to exclude. So I'm going to click that with both of them selected, and it's going to cut out that circle. So now I have the shape that has an actual cutout like it would in real life. So now that we have our shape, I'm going to just delete out this picture. We don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to select all of this and hit Command G to group it. And then I can move it all together as a group. Okay, so now we have our shapes. I also have this column that we're planning on using. This I created using the same method. I believe that I did a image trace with this. I drew this bowl, and then I used image trace for the cereal. And it's not the exact color that the cereal will be, but that's okay. It just gives you the idea. Okay, so I know that for this image, I want to have a dark blue background. So here's my blue back. And then I also wanted to have a wavy shape. And so this shape is the shape that I drew, and I want it to have these this pink and red striped pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on top of my pattern that I created, and I'm going to rotate this, and I'm going to make this into an outline, so that I can see exactly how the shapes are, or the stripes are going to be underneath it. So over here I'm going to switch the swap and or the fill and the stroke, and then keep rotating it until it's kind of how I envision it being in real life. And then just hit Command 7 with both of them selected, and it will cut out that shape with the stripes included. So, and then I also know I want to use a checkerboard pattern on the bottom. So what we're going to do is this is a 4x5, and we may do 4x5. We may crop it to a square, and so I'm going to just draw out a square that we can use for our crop. I'm going to put it down here. Okay, and then I'm just going to make this kind of like a color that's different from the colors that we're using in this set. Okay, so this is going to be our crop. So I'm going to put my blue background in there, and then I'm going to put my checkerboard in there as well. And the perspective is going to be a little bit off because I'm making this flat, and it's, you know, it's not going to be flat in real life. So the checkerboards are going to kind of look like they're going straight down, when in reality they're going to be more at a plane. And you could adjust it to kind of like, you know, if you kind of like squished it up, that might work to kind of give it the illusion. But I'm just going to leave them straight and just know, you know, this is how they'll actually be, or not how they'll actually be in real life. Okay, so I'm going to group these two, and then I'm going to cut them out using this, or actually I'll wait till the very end. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop in the items where I think they're going to be, but I needed to kind of make them somewhat to scale first. So if I just drop this in, kind of think probably it will crop to be maybe a little bit smaller than that. Let's see. Maybe somewhere around there. Okay, and so as we showed you guys, I measured this in advance. So I know that this is about 10 inches tall. I'm going to create lines using the pen tool. And these lines are going to kind of represent inches for me. So again, I'm going to kind of pick a color that's not in everything. Oops. And then we'll say that's 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, and then this line we're going to put at the very top. And then we're going to tell these lines to evenly space. So let's see, over here in our align tool, okay, we need to do a lot more than that. Let's see. Okay, that's about right. Okay, so this right here is about 10 inches. Now we know that this shape right here is going to be about 13 inches. So all we need to do is kind of add lines on top of this. So we'd need 1, 2, and 3. we can duplicate these. And okay, so I'm going to kind of shrink this down. And again, all of this is super rough. I don't, make anything, exact, especially in this kind of set where things can be a little bit looser. But it's really good to get kind of a general idea and try to make it as realistic as possible, and just also to know, how tall you need to make your cutouts. So, okay, so this now is about 3 inches taller than this, according to our little scale. And then we know that this column is 5 inches tall. So we can kind of use our measurements again, kind of put at the bottom here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it should kind of come up to the top of this guy. There we go. And then our bowl relative to that, that's actually about the size it is in real life. So that works out. Okay, so I'm going to drop these guys in. We can drop in this shape. We know we want it to be kind of about there. Go in closer and get my box. And then drop that in about here. And then this shape, I know that I want it to come behind this box. So we'll go there. And if for some reason it was in front of this box when you're making this, you can just go up to Object and then Arrange, and then you can send things backward or forward as needed. I know we want our little column to be kind of in the middle, so let's center it with this. So what I've done is I've selected both of those, and then I just use my Align tool to align this to the center, which means that this needs to kind of come back there. And then this guy will go about here. Okay, so I'm going to bring this guy to the front. Okay, and then we're going to kind of bring this guy down, this guy over a little bit, and actually we'll kind of make this guy over here. Okay, so this is a rough layout of where everything will be. Again, we may need to adjust things a little bit, but then this gives me a good sense. Now I can go in and measure and see, okay, how high do I need to make this back piece? How high are the arches going to be and how long it's going to be, to get a good rough sense of exactly how big it needs to be when I cut it out. Okay, and then now that I have all of the pieces there, what I'm going to do is just kind of cut out this square from the background, and then I'll send this to the back. There we go. So now we have our mock-up. I'm going to drop it into my my page from my shoot plan. I'm going to send this to the back. Okay. And then what I do like to do too is, if I do have pieces like this, I like to kind of take them out, and all I'm doing is holding down Option as I'm dragging it to create a duplicate, so that I can see that there, since it's kind of covered up a little bit in this mock-up. I can see here exactly how I'm going to need to cut it. I can print this out and write down all the dimensions that I measured, and make sure that I make this to scale. And we are ready to get building. So once you've planned out your sets, you'll be able to create a list of all the materials that you need. So I always create a full shoot plan and then go through that, making a list of all the things that are going to be needed, so I can just get everything in one go and make sure that we don't forget anything.
Yes.
So we have gone through our plan and come up with our list of materials that we're going to use for this set. Again, the list of materials that you use may be a little different depending on what your plan is, but let's go through what we're going to use. So first up, we're going to be using particle board.
This is what it looks like when it's like unpainted and it's like super smooth. So
super smooth.
Nice.
We'll be using this for the backgrounds as well as for some organic shapes that we're going to cut out. And then to actually cut out that shape, we're going to be using this saw. So this is a jigsaw. I also have a scroll saw that I use for some projects, kind of depends on what we're going to be doing. Then we have some trigger clamps. So you're going to want these to hold the wood in place while you're cutting it and just make sure it's super secure. And speaking of where you're going to place the wood, you're going to want some sort of really sturdy table or workhorses. They're actually holding up this table right now. You'll see them in a little bit, but that's what I'm going to use. But you'll just want a very stable surface to cut on. And then some safety glasses, of course. You want to make sure that your eyes are protected.
Yeah, because wood dust is going off everywhere.
It's getting crazy. You're going to probably use a measuring tape in every set that you do just to make sure that everything is to
All
scale.
the measurements are correct.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And a pencil
for
drawing out your shape before you cut it. And then I highly recommend painting with a roller always. You can try with a paintbrush, but you're probably going to regret it later. So make sure that you use a roller. We'll be going over that more later. You're also going to want, was this like a roller head? I don't know what you actually call this. But when you're painting particle board or MDF, what you want to use is the smooth to semi-smooth surface rollers so that they don't get as much texture. If you use the ones that are meant for really textured surfaces, it's going to cause the paint to be more textured. So
you probably want to grab a few of those, right?
Yeah, several.
You're working with different colors and doing different ones.
Yes. Sandpaper, this kind of goes along with the wood stuff we were talking about earlier, just to smooth out edges. And then for paint as well, you're going to want a stir stick and a paint opener. They'll probably give these to you for free if you get your paint at the hardware store. You can also use a screwdriver to open up the paint. You'll probably also want some kind of hammer or mallet to close the paint up when you're done. This is painter's tape. So this is what we're going to use to create the patterns on the backgrounds. You can use any kind of painter's tape. I prefer, this is called Frog Tape. It's the brand. And it just, in my opinion, makes much smoother, crisper lines. It's more expensive, but I feel like the payoff is worth it. Arabella says it's worth it because she's
I'll be
cleaning up the lines.
Exactly.
So I recommend this brand, but any kind of painter's tape will do. And then we have our paints. So this is Behr paint. It's from Home Depot. And this is just interior paint in flat. When you get paint, you want to just make sure that it's flat or matte. Flat will be less expensive. And we buy interior paint just because the quality is better. You can also use craft paint from Michaels or wherever, but you're probably going to have to do more coats. So this will save you time. We need spray paint as well because this will be used to change the color of the Moodlier pieces.
Yes.
And then you're going to want some kind of drop cloth or something to keep your surface clean that you're painting on. This is a cloth one. You can also use plastic. And then a paint tray to easily pour and get your roller all wet.
Yeah.
And then that's it. So these are all the things we're going to use, and then we can show you how we're going to use them. So as you saw in our mock-up, we want to create a fun wavy shape that we're going to paint with stripes. So when I cut out shapes, I typically use particle board, also called MDF, because it's easy to cut, it's super inexpensive, and as we mentioned earlier, when you paint on it, it's really smooth because there's no wood grain. It's basically just ground up wood. You could use any kind of wood that you want, but just know that there may be more texture to other kinds of wood, and it may show through when you take photos. So we recommend using wood or particle board, since it's going to be much sturdier and hold up to paint better than if you tried to use paper or cardboard for this kind of a set. And this piece is 2x4, which is perfectly fine for the size of our products. So first, let's draw our shape onto the board. I use a pencil so that I can erase if I need to, but since I'm going to be painting over, it's okay if there's some mistakes. And honestly, I'm not super incredibly precise when it comes to these kinds of things, especially with an organic shape like this. It's okay if it's a little bit off from my drawing or a little bit off from the measurements. And then we're going to use a measuring tape to mark the height that I need it to be, and then we'll draw the shape based on our mock-up. So and we want it to be 14 inches tall, so I'm just going to mark that there. this will be the 14-inch mark, and we're gonna make it 22 inches wide. We'll just mark it there. Okay. I've kind of marked on my mock-up how wide each of the little ridges are gonna be, so I'll kind of loosely mark those, but again, this doesn't have to be incredibly precise since it is an organic shape, but just so I get a rough idea. 8, 5. Okay. We're going to be using a jigsaw for this project. I love this saw because it's really good for both organic shapes and straight lines. It's pretty easy to use, but we always recommend purchasing some extra boards so you can have backups if you make a mistake when cutting. Try to cut slightly outside of your line since you can always cut more, but you can't cut less. And then I use sawhorses for this because you just want to make sure that your board doesn't touch a table or anything that the saw blade could move through. These are actually the stands that we use for our shooting table, and I've weighted them down with sandbags so that they're really secure. If you're going to cut on a table, just make sure that your board is set back from the table and that the table is just very stable. But I recommend investing in some workhorses like this if you're going to be doing projects like this often. So let's talk about safety for a second. You want to make sure that your surface is very stable and secure, like I mentioned, and you're going to want to fasten the board down with some strong clamps. These are what I use. They're called trigger clamps, and basically it's because there's a trigger that holds it, and then you press on it to release, like that. So let's go ahead and clamp this down, just super secure, and we're going to do it on both sides, and I like to do it kind of on each edge. Okay, and then we just test it to make sure it's secure. Make sure to wear safety goggles, and don't have any jewelry or long hair or super loose clothing that could get caught in the blade. So when you're ready to start cutting, you're going to want to start the saw without the blade actually touching the board, and then once it's started, you'll move it towards the board. It's really important that you don't start the saw with it already touching the board that you're cutting. And you want to cut slowly and just let the saw lead. Don't force it or push it. And just remember, you can always recut. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, since I already cut this part right here, I'm going to move this in so I can clamp this part of the board to the workhorse so that when I cut this edge, it's not just going to like fall to the ground, and I'm going to have more control over it. Okay, so let's take a look at our shape. So here we have it. As you can see, there's some little pieces of particle board that are left, and the edge isn't super smooth. So how we can fix that is we can get some sandpaper. You can also buy this in a block, which is a little bit easier to hold on to, and you can just sand the edges. And also, if there's any spots where maybe you like wanted to adjust it a little bit, you can do that with the sandpaper as well, and just make it super smooth before you paint it. So if you wanted to cut out a shape from the center of the board. The way that you can do that is you can drill a hole into the center, stick the saw in, and then cut out the shape from there. Or you can cut out half the shape on each board like this, and then just put them together and Photoshop out that line. So this will be used for another gift that you'll see posted on our feed, but this is how we made this circle. So let's talk about painting your boards. So again, we're going to be using particle board because like we've mentioned, it's so smooth and it just looks really good in photographs. And the great thing too is that you can paint each side a different color if you want. So you can use even less boards and purchase less if you need to. And then when you choose paint, just make sure that you always use matte or flat paint. Flat will be less expensive if you're buying from the hardware store, but either one is fine. You just want to make sure that any sheen is not going to have any sheen that will reflect the light when you shoot. And recently I've just been using house paint from the hardware store. It's just interior paint. This is easier since I'm usually going to the hardware store anyway, and it kind of eliminates an extra trip to the craft store. And the quality of the paint is just so much better than the craft paint that you can buy. It's also a little bit easier to match brand colors, and then you can just save the swatches in your client folders so that if you work for the same client again, you can just take these swatches back in and have them mix the same paint, and saves you some time. Also, a lot of this paint comes with primer in it already, so you don't need to do as many coats, and you also don't have to do a white coat or a primer coat when switching between colors. I usually find that with this kind of paint, I really only have to do 2 coats. This is a quart. You can buy this. This will cover multiple boards. If you're just doing one 2x4 board and you know that that's all you're going to be painting, you can just buy a sample if you want. However, I think that Behr paint is the only paint that has actual paint in their samples. If you buy samples from other brands, the quality will not be as good. So if you're just doing that, just buy a quart. And then I usually just eyeball colors to get them as close to the client colors as possible, since when we shoot and we have lights on them, they're going to photograph a little bit differently anyway, and we're almost always going to have to adjust them in Photoshop to make them precise. But there is a tool that you can use to find a match at the hardware store, so you don't have to stand there for hours holding swatches up. It's a site called Easy RGB, and it can match an RGB color profile to paint colors. So RGB is the mix of red, green, and blue that your monitor uses to display that particular color. And your client should be able to give you the RGB color profiles of their brand colors, but if they can't, you can also just take their logo or that color and drop it into Illustrator or Photoshop and add drop the image to get those colors that you need. So when you put the RGB values into Easy RGB, it's going to pull up a bunch of paint colors, and you can pick the one that's the closest to the color that you want. Home Depot usually has most competitor colors in their system, so if you give them the name of a color that's by Benjamin Moore or someone else, they can most likely make it. As I mentioned, you're probably going to have to Photoshop the colors to make them exact, but this is the easiest way that I've found to get close. And I always paint with a roller. It's so much easier than a brush, trust me. Do not try to paint these boards with a brush unless you want to hate yourself. And as I mentioned, you can also paint each side a different color, which gives a ton of options without having to purchase as many boards. When you paint the boards, the paint is going to create a little bit of texture, which you can leave or you can wipe it out in Photoshop depending on the look that you're going for that particular shoot. And you can definitely paint over them several times for different shoots before they get too textured, but eventually you're going to need to sand them down and smooth them out before repainting, and I recommend using an electric sander for this. Another thing that I've learned is that dark colored paint tends to be more transparent than light colored paint. So if you're painting a darker color, you're going to likely need primer or a white coat in between, or just buy paint with primer. Also, if you're creating a pattern, plan to paint the lighter color over the darker one, and that will save you a little bit of work. So here are the paint colors that we are using for this particular shoot. You're going to want to read the instructions on your own paint, but I wait about 30 minutes before doing a second coat and about an hour before I flip it over and paint the other side. And now we're ready to paint our boards. So when you purchase your Moodle pieces, you can either purchase them in colors, and there's a lot of colors you can choose from, or you can purchase them in white primer, so that you can just repaint them and do any colors that you want. And that's what we chose because we knew we were going to be changing them for different shoots. As you can see, like for example, this one we painted for a different shoot that we did in kind of this cream color. And you can paint them with regular paint and a brush or a small roller, but we found that spray painting is the quickest and easiest way to change the colors. You're going to want to use a matte spray paint, but if you can't find the color that you want in matte, you can also use this spray. It's just like a matte clear coat, and it will create a matte finish so that the light won't reflect off the pieces. The Moodle pieces in primer are perfect for if you want to be able to change the colors and have a lot of variety. You can paint them as they are, but if you ever wanted to spray paint something that is metal or plastic, for example, we're going to be using this bowl for this shoot, but I don't want it to be in this color. You're going to want to first cover this with a primer, a spray paint primer, so that the spray paint actually dries well and actually hardens. Otherwise, if you try to spray paint plastic without a primer, it's going to be kind of tacky and never dry fully. You're going to want to read the instructions on your specific spray paint, but this one that we're going to use says that you want to wait an hour for the paint to be fully dry before you handle it, or 24 hours until it's like fully dry. And you're going to want to make sure to go in really thin light coats to avoid the paint dripping when you're painting it. If you do end up with drips or texture, you can use sandpaper to lightly buff it away once the paint has dried, and then repaint. And kind of the same as the boards, if you're repainting these a lot of times, eventually you're going to need to kind of sand them down before you paint them again. Okay, so in our shoot plan, we had planned to have a dark blue background, so we're going to paint one of these boards just dark blue, and that'll be all we'll do to that one. And then we're going to have a checkerboard on the bottom, so we're going to paint this other board dark blue as well, and then once it dries, we'll be putting the light pink checkers onto it. And then we're also going to paint this shape that we cut out, and we're going to be painting it in red and pink stripes. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint the whole thing red, and then we'll add the pink stripes as soon as that red paint is dry. So we'll start with the blue first. Just going to go ahead and open it up with our little paint opener. Okay, it's a beautiful color. And I'll just give it a little stir. Sometimes I also just kind of shake it once before I open it, and that works for stirring as well. And I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit in. And I like to kind of just take the roller and clean up the outside of it a little bit. Set it back there. Okay, and since both of these boards will be blue, we can just use the same paint and roller on both of them. And then we can just get going. And try to make it as even as possible. So what I'll do is once I kind of just get it all covered in color, I'll go back over it and just make sure I smooth out any lines that were made using the roller. And you want to try to go in multiple directions so that you just make sure that everything is super even and there's no weird lines or shapes left. And I know that the edge of this shape is not going to show in this photo, but if it was going to show, you'd want to take a paintbrush and make sure you go along the edge of the shape as well. Okay, so now we're going to let them dry for about 30 minutes, and then we'll do a second coat, and then we can go ahead and add our shapes and patterns. Okay, so now that we have 2 coats of color on this board and the shape that we cut out, we're going to make patterns. So you could make patterns just using a paintbrush and making organic shapes if you wanted. But if you want really straight lines or precise, very geometric shapes, you can use painter's tape. And I mentioned earlier, this is my favorite kind. It's called frog tape, and I think it just is higher quality, and it sticks better so that less paint seeps under and the lines are just crisper and smoother. So actually I'm gonna take my gloves off while I do this, make it a little bit easier. So let's start out with the checkered. So how it works is the easiest way is to paint one set of squares and then remove the paint and paint another set of squares. And I'll show you guys what I mean. So basically what we're going to do is take our tape, and this is actually the size that I want the checkers to be as far as width goes. If you wanted to make them wider, you could always just lay down 2 sets of tape. But how I do it is I like to start on the very end, just so that I can make sure it's nice and straight. And I line up the end of the tape with the end of the board. Wasn't quite long enough. So line that up. And then in order to make them even, what I'm going to do is put another piece of tape next to it. And that's going to be my measurement for my blank space. And what you want to make sure is that when you're lining it up, you line up the top and the bottom, but also the middle. Because when you just go straight down, it may not actually be straight, so you have to kind of like align every part of it. Okay, so this tape is going to be my guide for making the spaces, and I'm just going to keep reusing it as I move along. Okay, so see, I lift it up, and now I can see have the space there. And then we'll align this one. And we're just going to repeat this all the way down the board this way. And as we're doing this, we will be as precise as possible, but we can also and will actually have to clean it up in Photoshop later. So you can always straighten things out, smooth them out a little bit if needed, fix any little imperfections. So try to get it as good as you can, but just remember you'll be able to fix it later too. So now that we have our vertical lines, we're going to need to make horizontal lines as well. So we want them to be the same width so that they'll be a perfect square. So I'm just going to run tape along this way and basically repeat the same pattern. Okay, so now that we have our first squares laid down, we're going to go ahead and just smooth out this tape. Make sure it's all stuck on really well so that there's no chance for the paint to seep underneath. And sometimes I like to just use a paint stirrer to do this. I can really get all the edges. Okay, so this is what our shape looks like. We can go ahead and paint it, and then our checkerboard pattern looks like this. And this will be the first round of squares. So I tend to use a roller to paint these as well. I just find that a roller is a lot easier and faster. You could use a brush, but I think a roller works just as well and is a little bit easier. Okay, and then you can just roll directly over the tape. Okay, so then you can let it dry and do a second coat. And then once we do that, we'll be making a second set of squares on our checkerboard. You want to just try to pull kind of, let's see, I'll show you guys, just straight down. You can see a nice little line. And this is probably the most satisfying part of these kind of projects. Okay, so this is what our first round of squares looks like. It's pretty good. There's definitely spots that will have to be cleaned up. Probably could have like pressed the tape in a little bit more, but that's okay. It'll be totally fine in post-production. And so this in itself is kind of a fun pattern. But what we're gonna have to do is we'll have to add tape so that we make the connecting squares. We're gonna be doing it in the same color, but you could do a different color if you wanted to add even a crazier pattern. But that's how we'll make a checkerboard pattern. You have to kind of make one row of squares and then make the connecting squares. There's not really a good way to do it all at once. So we'll be doing a second coat on this, and then our set will be complete. Okay, so to make the squares that connect, basically we need to fill in these parts. The easiest way to do it is just to go over the squares that you've already made with tape and let those be your guide. So we are gonna just add in this tape here. Okay, we've painted our second round of squares. Go ahead and lift this up so you guys can see while I'm pulling the tape off. Okay, so you can see now the squares match up and make a checkerboard pattern. There we go. So there's definitely places where, you know, there's a little bit of paint, and you could go in and fix it with a little brush too, like a really straight brush if you wanted to. But you can also just fix it in Photoshop, and that might almost be easier because, you know, some of this is going to get covered up by props and stuff anyway, so it may not even show. So yeah, I'd recommend just fixing it in Photoshop. And you'll also notice that it does create kind of like a raised pattern. So if you ever do want to repaint a board that you have created a pattern on, whether that's stripes or checkers, you'll just want to make sure that you sand it down first. Otherwise, when you put a coat of paint over this, you'll still be able to kind of see where those squares or the stripes or whatever pattern you had was. But now we are ready to get our set all set up and start shooting.
All right, so now we are ready to set up our scene, and we've got our whole usual setup. If you watched our first course that we partnered up with Moodle, you would know all of the details about, you know, our tools, equipment, how we set up, you know, working with Capture One, and all the details. So make sure to check that out. This course will kind of be more geared towards like really the set design and the props and kind of seeing how they all kind of come together. So yeah, so we've got pretty much everything set up. Now we're just gonna turn on the live view in Capture One, and this is kind of just our usual process because it makes it easier for us to style, you know, the backdrops, the props, and all the fun stuff. So I'm gonna do that right now.
And we have our shoot plan here, so we can just follow along with that as we're setting up and just make sure that we are sticking with what we had originally planned and then making adjustments from there.
So let's see, got that set up, and then let's just put it up like the backdrop.
Okay.
And then I can adjust the camera from there.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use, this is our background support. Is that what you call it? Background support?
Yeah, background support stand.
Our background stand.
Yeah, it's by Photech.
It's by Photech.
Yeah. We share all the tools and stuff, everything that we use in that first course too.
Yeah, and we have all these things linked in our Amazon shop as well, which you can find on our site, and that's just an easy place to kind of find everything if you're looking to purchase your own. But we're going to use this. This is typically used for seamless, but we're actually just going to lean our particle board on it in order to like hold it up.
Yeah,
and
just use some clamps.
Make it very secure.
Yeah, cool.
And we always put the bottom piece first and then put the back piece on top of it just because it creates a better, more seamless line.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in the back.
Oh, behind this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you mind handing me a...
Yeah. And then we just use these clamps to attach it to the back. Get rid of some little fingerprints that are here. Okay.
And I'll usually just go over it with like a little kind of cloth. Get rid of any dust or any random things. Clean it up.
Perfect.
Try to keep the set as clean as possible because, you know, that'll help with retouching. And then let's wear some gloves too.
Yes.
So here's yours.
Yeah, we always wear gloves like this just to keep fingerprints off of the products and the props and the set. It makes retouching a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Save myself some time.
Okay, and then can you just move the camera in as much as needed for this?
Mm-hmm.
And so we are going to be shooting this as a 4x5 crop. It'll be able to be cropped in other ways as well, but we want to make sure it looks good on Instagram because that's the main place we're going to be using it. So we have that guide set up for ourselves on Capture One. And this way we can just make sure that our scene is set up perfectly.
Cool.
Okay, and then we're going to use a C-stand to hold up this piece. You could probably also use a clamp and just clamp it here and kind of have it go down at an angle like this, but it'll just be extra secure if we're using a C-stand. Yeah. And since we're making a GIF, we want everything to be really stable and secure so that nothing moves when we're shooting.
Exactly. Okay, you can put this down a little bit.
Let's see if I got it.
Very good. And then, of course, like you said, 4x5, right?
4x5, yeah.
Okay. So I usually always make a lot of overlays in Photoshop to kind of like, you know, anytime like a client might give us dimensions or anything, you know, I try to make the little overlay in Photoshop so that I can just pop it in and see that it works with the image that we're creating. So.
And it doesn't really matter that you're seeing this on that side because we can always in Photoshop later just extend it out. So we can take the shape and the stripes and just push it out if needed, if we wanted to fill that space more as an option.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have a hand coming through here, so I want to make sure there's enough space for that. And then this piece is going to go in the very center. Here. And then we have our bowl that we spray painted. We have filled this with foam because we're going to be making a pile with the cereal, and we don't need to fill the whole thing with cereal, so this way we can use less product and just it'll go by faster. Let's see the best side. Here we go.
Cool. I kind of wonder if we should move everything back a little bit more to give more space. Do you think for your hand too, to like, because you might be too close to the cereal?
We can move back a little bit. I want there to be space between the board and this, but we can move back a little bit.
Maybe a tiny bit, yeah. So we just took care of, thank you, hiding the, what do you call it, like the foam?
That's the floral foam?
Yeah, we just kind of added, Ellie added foam into the bowl to make it easier for the cereal to rise up so we don't have to fill it as much to make it easier. But now we're just going to tape it. Since we're doing a GIF, we want everything to stay as in the same position the entire time. So I'm going to add some tape at the bottom, and then we're going to tape it to the back too to kind of like secure it and like make sure that it doesn't move. Cool.
Then we have our cereal box. So we set up our shot. We took a test shot with the light just to make sure that everything is good. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to composite two different kinds of images together. So we're going to shoot the motion of the hand going through and tapping the bowl, and then we'll be done with that and we'll do a shot of the bowl filled. So Arabella can just composite that and she'll show you that in a little bit. So we'll just take a shot with nothing. And then we just take a shot slowly moving in.
So here's the start. Cool. Cute. Now we're gonna add the cereal, and we're gonna do the shot separately from the movement because really I'm just gonna composite the cereal in the GIF later on in post. So it's not too big of a deal as long as we don't like move it like a whole lot. But oh my gosh.
Gotta have a snack.
Yay! That looks so good.
Cute.
That's super cute. I love it. We've got our movement, we've got our cereal, and pretty much good to go. And now we're just gonna
We can hop over to post and finish this
take
up.
it over to post. Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, I've been kind of just using the spot healing brush tool, the patch tool, and sometimes the clone stamp tool to clean up the backgrounds, and especially like the cutout shapes that Ellie cut and painted, and these like fun little patterns. And so now we're gonna kind of get into cleaning the checkerboard part of our set. And thankfully, Ellie has switched over from using the regular painter's tape to another tape called Frog's tape, and I think it's a green color, but yeah, which actually leaves really nice clean lines, so I don't really have to do as much post. So it's actually pretty clean for the most part, but I'm still going to show you kind of what I do to just clean it up even more. You can obviously tell there's a little bit of weirdness going on in the corners, just due to the paint and stuff. So what I usually typically do is I will just kind of follow the line of the square that's in here and just kind of build that shape within the square. And it makes a nice little selection. And so what I end up doing is I'll go to select and mask, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to smooth out my selection because I don't want it to be harsh. Maybe I'll feather it a little bit as well. Yeah, and so then I just kind of hit OK, and I will copy and paste. And now I have this layer here that I can manipulate, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do Command T or, edit transform. And I'm just going to do, let's see, I might do just a warp. I mean, I'll test it out, I'll try different things. But sometimes all I need is the warp tool, and that's great. And I just kind of start moving it around and fixing just like where the edges meet. And I actually think I might switch that, and I'll actually do transform. Maybe distort actually might be a little bit better. Yeah, that looks a little bit better, I think. And you're gonna have to mess with it, it's not gonna be like completely perfect, so you have to kind of play with it and see where you'll get it right. So that's not bad. I actually think I might go back though, and instead of making it too soft, I think I'll just keep it a little bit more. So I'll go back to select and mask, and I'll just smooth it out like a tiny bit, nothing like crazy. I still want it to be pretty defined, and I'll do that distort. Cool. And there we go. It's pretty basic. And I hit enter. And now that looks pretty good to me. And basically that's kind of what I'm going to do for the rest of them. And you can choose which colored squares you're going to want to edit or retouch. I am choosing blue. So, but I could have also done pink too. It doesn't matter. But I think blue is kind of the one that's I can just easily manipulate, And so yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'll just go ahead and do that throughout the whole thing. So it is going to take a little bit of time. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and speed this up for you. Oh, and one last thing too. Sometimes I will kind of go and retouch the whole board before I mess with the square. So like obviously all these little details I'll just like clean up first, and then I will get into all of that. So I'll just do that real quick and we're all set. We've talked about a lot today, so let's recap what you've learned.
In this course, you've learned how important it is to dedicate time to the pre-production part of your workflow. Understanding the brand you're shooting is vital to creating work that really brings out the character of the products.
You've learned how to come up with set design concepts and how to bring your vision from idea to final product.
You've learned how to create and design your own sets while also using Moodle pieces to complement the rest of the scene.
We hope you enjoyed our tutorial on set design. If you'd like to see more of our content, follow us on Instagram at Weekend Creative or visit our website at weekend-creative.com.
For even more content, join the Weekend Club. It's an online community for photographers who want to learn and grow together. It's a place where we share exclusive content, videos, live chats, brand new blogs, and much, much more. You'll be able to learn about so many things, including pricing, gear, getting more jobs, working with clients, and even more.
Lastly, check out our podcast. Per our last email, it's a brand new freelancing comedy podcast where we talk about the ups and downs of freelancing. Join us as we meet with special guests and share personal stories about all the mishaps, difficult clients, and shady shenanigans that freelancers deal with, all while enjoying some tasty cocktails, because it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Thank you for watching. Is it the weekend yet?